Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel's parliament, the Knesset, passed a bill into law this week which grants the prime minister, after consulting with the country's defense minister, to declare war. The presentation Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made on the documents Israel's intelligence agency obtained from Iran's nuclear weapons archives continues to top the agenda of world powers ahead of U.S. President Donald Trump's 12th of May deadline to decide on whether to pull the United States out of the Iranian nuclear deal. The Palestinian Supreme Authority convenes for the first time in 22 years, during which Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas criticizes U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and to relocate the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Israel's parliament, the Knesset, passed a bill into law this week which grants the prime minister, after consulting with the country's defense minister, to declare war. The law, which was passed in the Knesset plenum in second and third readings by a majority of 62 to 41, shifts the power to go to war or to carry out military operation from the cabinet to the security cabinet, a narrow forum of ministers tasked with outlining the country's foreign and defense policies. However, under extreme circumstances, and if necessary for reasons of urgency that make it impossible to convene the security cabinet ministers, the new law empowers the prime minister, together with his defense minister, to make the decision with fewer ministers and even just in consultation with each other. Now to another matter. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, during a joint press conference with his Japanese counterpart, Shinzo Abe, declared his commitment to peace and security. Netanyahu emphasized, however, that peace was not a viable reality unless Israel would have the capacity and legitimacy to defend its security against anyone who seeks to attack its citizens and sovereignty. The Israeli leader further took the opportunity to make an analogy between the threats posed to Japan by North Korea and those posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran to the State of Israel. Meanwhile, the presentation Prime Minister Netanyahu made on the documents Israel's intelligence agency obtained from Iran's nuclear weapons archives continues to top the agenda of world powers ahead of U.S. President Donald Trump's 12th of May deadline to decide on whether to pull the United States out of the Iranian nuclear deal. While President Trump provided Britain, France, and Germany time to fix what he perceives as the flaws of the agreement, including its failure to address Iran's ballistic missile program, the terms by which inspectors visit suspected Iranian sites, and the sunset clauses under which some of the agreement's terms have an expiration date, Europe's leadership voices its adamant position to keep the deal intact. During a press conference in Berlin, German Chancellor Angela Merkel underlined her intention to keep the deal, yet echoed French President Emmanuel Macron's demand to formulate another agreement that will thwart Iran's aggressive behavior.
Und dahingehend werden wir auch unsere Argumentation fortsetzen, also Erhaltung des JCPOA plus Erweiterung des Verhandlungsrahmens. Und wir glauben, dass es jetzt sehr wichtig ist, dass auch die Informationen, die aus Israel kamen, sehr schnell der IAEA zur Verfügung gestellt werden, damit dort eine Prüfung vorgenommen werden kann. Denn das ist genau die Stelle, an der ja auch die Kontrollen und Inspektionen stattfinden. Dass wir aber sehen, dass es mit dem Iran noch weitere Probleme natürlich gibt. Sowohl was den politischen Einfluss in Syrien anbelangt, was das ballistische Raketenprogramm anbelangt und was auch die Frage, was passiert denn nach Auslaufen von Teilen von diesem Abkommen. Darüber sollte man zusätzlich sprechen. Das ist, glaube ich, auch eine weitgehend gemeinsame Position in der Europäischen Union.
While the general belief predicts an American pullout from the nuclear agreement, French President Emmanuel Macron stressed during a visit to Sydney, Australia, that the ultimate goal of attaining regional stability would be spearheaded by France, Britain, and Germany.
France is very much attached to the stability of the overall region, is very much attached to the security of its allies. That's why we want to work on these new negotiations in a strong coordination with Germany and the United Kingdom. We will work very actively in order to convince everybody to have, in the coming days, weeks and months, such a negotiation, which is the only way to progress and stabilize the region.
The revelation by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, however, has bolstered Washington's anger at the flaws of the nuclear agreement and provides tailwind to domestic support on President Trump's decision to pull out of the nuclear deal. During a briefing at the White House, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders underlined the fact that Iran's nuclear capabilities were far more advanced and further along than Tehran ever indicated to the international community.
Well, the problem is that the deal was made on a completely false pretense. Iran lied on the front end. They were dishonest actors. And so the deal that was made on things that weren't accurate. And we have a big problem with that, particularly the fact that Iran's nuclear capability were far more advanced and far further along than they ever indicated, which if this nuclear deal maintains as it is right now, when the sunset provision hits in 7 years, they will be much further along in the process and able to make a nuclear weapon much quicker than they've ever indicated before.
In a surprise statement, however, former Mossad director Dani Yatom spoke against Prime Minister Netanyahu and called on the United States to keep the nuclear agreement intact. Yatom stressed in an interview that no new material had been found in the Iranian nuclear archive, which rejects claims of a so-called smoking gun. Yatom explained that while the information could have once been a smoking gun, it is irrelevant today. Now to the West Bank city of Ramallah, where the Palestinian Supreme Authority convened for the first time in 22 years. In a 2-hour opening address, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas criticized U.S. President Donald Trump's decision last year to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and to relocate the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The Palestinian leader stressed to the de facto parliament of the Palestine Liberation Organization that the American stance favoring Israel might require tough decisions in the near future. Among other topics discussed, President Abbas made a comment that has angered Israel, in which the Palestinian leader referred to the hatred of Jews that spread across Europe before the Holocaust occurred.
ليس العداء لليهودية بسبب دينهم وإنما بسبب وظيفتهم الاجتماعية. هذه قضية مختلفة. إذا المسألة اليهودية التي كانت منتشرة في كل دول أوروبا ضد اليهود ليس بسبب دينهم وإنما بسبب وظيفتهم الاجتماعية اللي بتعلق في الربا والبنوك وإلى آخره.
In response to those comments, Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesman Emmanuel Nachshon condemned the Palestinian leader, accusing him of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial.
Israel is deeply shocked by the anti-Semitic speech of the Palestinian President, Mr. Abbas. What we have heard from Mr. Abbas is a series of anti-Semitic accusations of an ugly nature. Mr. Abbas accuses actually the Jewish people for being responsible for its own tragedy. Those are things that we cannot accept. There is also in Mr. Abbas's speech an element of Holocaust denial, which is also punishable by law in many countries of the world. It is clear that what Mr. Abbas has said is totally incompatible with the spirit of peace and negotiations. We demand that Mr. Abbas will immediately apologize for this anti-Semitic hate speech, and we ask the international community to condemn this speech in the harshest possible words.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo suggested earlier this week that he was open to a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, saying a two-party solution was likely in his first extensive comments on peace efforts since taking the job of America's top diplomat last week. Thank you for watching us. Praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hassan. Have a Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.